Okay, nerds. Time for me to make people mad with my hipster opinions. If you've been following my LP of Persona 5 Royal and Strikers, seen my Persona roast, and actually watched the videos previously mentioned, you'll know that I am a hipster Persona fan. Meaning, I didn't just play Persona 3 through 5 like most people. I played a total of 5 Persona games, experiencing the 6th via a friend who knew Japanese. Yes, I am old, but this is the part where I smirk behind a fandom's superiority to the general American masses, who refuse to acknowledge the first 2, technically 3 Persona games. I personally played Persona Revelations and Persona 2 Eternal Punishment. Persona 2 Innocent Sin was unfortunately an experience I had to watch from a friend's playthrough, as they knew Japanese and the game wasn't released in my dumb language. The games resonated with me and only made me more excited to play 3 through 5, completing my journey through the Persona mainline series. That said, I have been asked about how I would list the games in terms of worst to best, since I had experienced all of the games in one way or another. While I'm 100% certain of my own personal list, I've actually had arguments with friends about my rankings, so it's never been something I thought to talk openly about. Then a fuck it button appeared, and I pressed it. So, here's my list of worst to best Persona mainline games. Now, I am not touching the spin-off fighting, Q Labyrinth, or dancing games. While they are nice, they're just that. Nice. Like snacks around the main meals, meant to be enjoyed but aren't actually filling or needed to survive. So this list only deals with the 5, technically 6, mainline Persona games. Also, be aware that this is my personal tier list. My opinions are mine, and you are free to disagree with them. But with as much time as I've had with Persona, I'm as solid as the Great Seal about where every game goes. You're not going to change my mind, so erase that prepared paragraph you wrote in the comments about how you'll unsubscribe if I don't say your favorite Persona game is my favorite. Besides, only 30% of you who watch my videos are subscribed anyway, so yeah. So here we go. Number 5. Alright, I gotta prepare myself. Alright, this is where I've made a lot of people mad, so forgive me if I stretch out a little bit. Okay, Persona 3. Now let me be perfectly clear, it's a good game. It's solid enough in its own right with introducing an entirely new system to the series, interesting designs of the demons and personas, and being extremely plot-heavy. That said, I found it both overwhelming, as I had come from Persona 2 Eternal Punishment with a preset idea of how to play Persona in mind, and at the end of it all, it was meh? Good points. The story is deep and interesting. The symbolism of facing death is extremely powerful, with using, in essence, suicide to summon our eternal personas. The struggles that the characters go through is relatable in one way or another. Tartarus was really nice to grind through, especially as a gamer who loves to overlevel their party. Even the battles are interesting, with the additions of knockdown advantages, a tower climb for grinding, and an adjusted way to use magic and skills to attack. Now to make people mad. First, I will acknowledge my situation going into Persona 3 from a revisit in Persona 2. These two games are extremely different in terms of organization, gameplay, and the like. To say it was jarring to go from the latter to the former is not an exaggeration. The removal of Nameless, Belladonna, and Painter hurt me. Sure, elevators are cool, but so was the original Velvet Room. That said, I still had problems I think many people would agree with outside of my biased experience. The battle system was nice and new, but it was absolutely annoying not being able to control my other party members more than just suggesting the type of actions they'll do. How many goddamn times do I need Mitsuru to cast the same spell? When I fucking want her to, goddammit, not when she feels like it. Also, while the new designs for demons were interesting, some were laughably bland or boring. Maybe it was the graphic limitations of the time, but still, even the pixel demons had more interesting features. The dungeon maps can be bleh at times, reusing the same elements over and over without truly distorting the real world around them. Sure, technical limitations are a reason, but even Persona 2 had more detail. Some of the side stories are oddly paced or barely involved, and all of the social links required you to bend to the person you were linking to rather than how you wanted to build the protagonist. The social links with the girl party members made me almost not follow them at all. Maxing out the girl social links somehow meant you were romancing them one way or another, and you'd even get scolded for romancing multiple girls. That really turned me off from social links, despite the necessity for them. Finally, the time management. In order to max out the social links, you had to literally follow a strict guide you'd find on a website for your mornings and nights, just to make sure you can get close to people, trying to scrape out time to bring up your social stats, to make Minato more than just a guy with a lot of friends and nothing else. Add on time to get into Tartarus, and boom, heavy schedule. It was almost daunting for me, and I publicly admit to giving up halfway through the game and just relaxing into doing whatever the hell I wanted instead of backtracking when I missed a chance to build a social link. Also, Persona 3's added chapter, The Answer. It is easily the worst addition to any Persona game. Needlessly long, boring, and stripped of what makes Persona unique, on top of adding tediousness to Persona fusions and making grinding something even I can't stand. Plus, making Minato's sacrifice worthless because feelings is absolutely terrible all around and should not be a message explored. At least we get to see Minato do his job. Well, he could be just sleeping on it, but still. All in all, Persona 3 is not a terrible game at all, not one bit. It was nice and fun, but it was not my favorite at all in comparison to the previous Persona games, and even compared to the games that followed after. It was probably a mix of me jumping in with pre-expectations and legitimate critiques that put this game at the bottom of my list. Number 4. Persona Revelations, or Revelations Persona, tomato tomato. Most people will recognize the PlayStation Portable version, as it has a lot of scenes the original American release did not have, and it was refreshed for a new audience that became enthralled with Persona 3. Both are the same story, so don't stress if you're not fully educated on one or the other. That said, the good before the bad. As my first experience in the series, I was very much entranced at a unique game that wasn't another Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest. More than 4 party members in a battle? Sign me up! Emotions have value in battle? That's so cool! Every single party member could have personas and not just the self-insert protagonist? Hell yeah! You can talk to the demons? Pacifism in battle didn't start with Undertale, ladies, gents, and nons. Now, while people absolutely drag the American version for getting the 4Kids treatment, the original PlayStation version is the one I experienced before going through the portable version later in life. Despite the changes and cuts, as a child that could barely wrap my fingers around the controller, I genuinely enjoyed my time with Revelations. For me, there's no critique that can destroy that nostalgia. Despite everyone lamenting how Mark had a racial change instead of just being another Asian character with questionable fashion sense, I loved this change and found myself being sad at the reversal when playing the portable version. Still, I loved seeing the content in the portable version that was originally cut from the American release. Older and wiser, a lot of things clicked together and made me answer questions the child I was had. The Snow Queen arc was fun, and I wish the original had kept it. Even though some of the towers were a struggle and the time limit was a little daunting, it was still very fun to play. Now, I will defend this game to the grave. The first Persona game crawled to make the others walk, run, and jump out of stained glass windows. It was a step away from the Megami Tensei series, officially branching the Persona series as its own beast, like Nier did with Drakengard. Still, looking at the game case for Revelations is enough to remind me how dated the game is. Every single Persona 1 player would agree with me in saying, the encounter rate is too damn high! While I love a good opportunity to grind and become overpowered, sometimes I couldn't take 3 steps without getting hit with a random encounter. Revelations definitely had some cringe-worthy translated scripts, despite being mostly faithful to the plot. So getting into the story was easier as a child who was dumb than as an adult with a more developed brain. The artwork, despite being made by the absolutely talented Kazuma Kaneko, is definitely not the best in the series. But then again, it was the first game, so it could only get better over time. The story was confusing at times, but I have to lay the blame on the edited American version not having key story elements that fully fleshed it out, so it's not a total negative for me. At the end of the day, it has a special place in my heart, but there are other titles that just resonated with me a little more. Number 3. Persona 4 and Persona 4 Golden. When Persona 4 was released for the PS2, my dad instantly grabbed it, being that he was the one who made me a Persona fan. My dad, my sister, and I sat in front of the TV and played through the first couple of chapters, absolutely drawn in by the new story occurring in Yasuo Inaba. The characters were cliché, but they made us smile, and it felt like we were watching an anime before and after school on Toonami. I also am a stupidly obsessed sucker for murder mysteries, so much so that I made a series of my own called Ruffled. With Persona 4, you literally have to figure out a string of murders, and I was eating out of the palm of the game's hand like a trained puppy. While the graphical blandness from 3 transferred to 4, the balances in combat and time management were a little more open. We got a combat system that had knockdown chances, and we were able to control our fellow party members. Finally, no more spamming the same charm spell. Plus, our navigator and battle commentator was able to actively give buffs and supports to the party, so neat. I almost put myself on autopilot with the social links, having been burnt by Persona 3, but after giving some of the options a shot, I personally felt less choked. I was able to enjoy the side stories rather than panic on whether or not I made a good choice in my schedule to make sure I could get the Arcana bonuses I wanted. Also, Funky Student is the best NPC and no one can convince me otherwise. However, as I mentioned before, the characters are cliché. As a kid, I enjoyed this a lot. Hell, even as an adult, cliché characters can be fun and enjoyable if done correctly. The Scooby Gang, however, is not the case in that matter. I will 100% place the blame for Yosuke's super straight stereotype on the homophobic director, but the clichés of the other characters can be considered obnoxious. Some of the side stories are really nice, but others are easy fast-forward potential. Watch my roast for my detailed critiques on each, but you'll have to decide for yourself which stories to read through and which to skip. Also, having options blocked off at the beginning of the game because of your social stats is dumb as fuck. Just let me ask for Chie's number straight out instead of propagating the idea that girls' phone numbers are like their virginities. The dungeons, while randomly generated, are boring and cramped because of the camera angle. Battles with the demons are predictable until their AI suddenly gets really smart and just downs your entire party for no reason. Still, Persona 4 was enjoyable, and while the addition of the Mary Sue only made things longer, the story was still fun and played with my murder mystery love in many ways. I loved twists and turns, and we got to save the world yet again. But now here comes the hard part. Alright, if you've been following along and counting, only 2, technically 3 games are left. Persona 5 and the Persona 2 duology, Innocent Sin and Eternal Punishment. Ever since I finished the original Persona 5, my heart became torn. The Persona 2 duology up until that point had been my #1 Persona franchise game for a million reasons. The story caught me, the characters intrigued me, the gameplay was fun and enjoyable, and I had a sense of complete and utter satisfaction playing it with only minor complaints to spare. My defense of the duology has even scared away friends who swore up and down to be devoted to Persona 3 and 4. Persona 5, however, stepped up to challenge my champion for the top spot. Both are absolutely phenomenal games within their own right, but to keep the list fair, only one can be my champion. And I think I now have an answer. After almost 4 years, the battle for dominance finally settled, and all because of one secret curveball that was released halfway through the battle. So here is my number 2. Persona 2 duology, Innocent Sin and Eternal Punishment. It's so hard for me to lose my champion, but it put up a serious fight until now. While I did experience the duology out of order, playing Eternal Punishment while watching a friend play through the original Japanese-only release of Innocent Sin after, I still fell in love with Tatsuya, Maya, and both crews from each side. It's a game I consistently replayed to experiment and try new things with combat, town exploration, rumor spreading, and character lore from both games. Many argue that it's dated and ugly to look at, but I grew up learning how to read with Final Fantasy. Eye candy was never a need for me, as I had a very active imagination to fill in the gaps and make the pixel world as vibrant as a movie. The pacifism of talking to shadows was one of my favorite parts of combat, especially in Eternal Punishment, where you could team up with other party members and talk about anything from fortunes, gossip, and group therapy. The possibilities seemed endless. Still, the combat itself wasn't hard at all, despite many people claiming that Persona 2 is the hardest to play combat-wise. Innocent Sin could almost be played on auto, as long as you knew what you were doing. while Eternal Punishment simply stretched your muscles to use the entirety of the game's mechanics. The step away from first-person travel was very much needed from Persona 1, and gave me a chance to really explore as both Tatsuya and Maya in their respective games. Even the Velvet Room felt alive with Belladonna, Nameless, and the Painter occupying it with Igor. To this day, the Velvet Room theme from Persona 2 is by far the best version of it, as it feels alive with Belladonna and Nameless putting their souls into the music beyond it just being ambience. My minor complaints only dumb down to the unneeded love triangle between Katsuya, Tatsuya, and Maya, some design choices for personas and demons, and the balance with light and dark magic. Also, the sweepstakes. Still, never to this day have I won a damn sweepstakes. Fucking hell. Regardless, what can I say? As a fan of Lovecraftian mythos, having Nyarlathotep essentially destroy humanity as their ultimate shadow was perfect. Tatsuya wanting to become more than just a silent protagonist while saving Maya was heart-wrenching. Each teenager and adult had their issues, and we got to see so many sides to many similar stories, the best example of this being the differences between Baofu and Katsuya. Both have internalized regrets, but both deal with it in different ways, solidifying that everyone has their own problems to solve even if they are common. Plus, Persona 2 Eternal Punishment deals with adults! Finally, a game that doesn't revolve around a damn high school life with teenagers who are just trying to learn and be mature. We actually have adults who are set in their ways and just need a little kick in the pants once in a while that can be relatable to any age. Even with the ending being happy but bittersweet, I felt satisfied and understood completely. Not everything is going to be perfect, but you do the best you can to step forward and, as Maya would say, be positive. And now the victor, and why they took the champion spot. Number 1. Persona 5 Royal. Now, allow me to be transparent. If Royal had not been created and released, the Persona 2 duology would still be my champion. While the original Persona 5 was great, many things weighed it down to a second-place position. Morgana hard-limiting time, many useless confidants, questionable scenes, and other minor complaints kept it down. I'm looking at you, Mementos loop music. When Royal came out, a lot of things changed for the better, which gave it the edge it needed to take the top spot. The characters are bright and fun, despite dealing with a lot of dark and deep issues, some that even make Persona 3 look like a sunny walk in the park. While they are cliché, they aren't obnoxiously so. They each have a well-rounded personality within and outside their stereotype, with some fun secrets beneath their masks. Fitting for Persona, no? The story itself is noble, and we get to see teenagers learn more than just what is in their school life. They grow up to influence and protect the world around them, even using their lives to protect humanity from the demiurge Yaldabaoth. It took me by surprise, and made me feel that joy that I had when I played Persona 2 Eternal Punishment. I was lost in the lore, enjoying my time exploring Shibuya, and saving it from Shido and the other cool adults. Each confidant was unique enough to at least give them all a fair shake without pressing fast forward. Except Oya. I also didn't feel like I had to bend Akira to each person, but rather show him as the confident leader he is during his time in the metaverse. I also appreciate that there is comedic punishment for cheating on your romance options or attempting to make a harem. Polygamy is cool, but only if all parties consent. Get fucked, cheaters. What really hit me was the return of talking to the demons. I absolutely hated that Persona 3 and 4 removed the ability to communicate with the demons, as demons were simply reflections of other human beings' hearts, sentient and willing to speak. When it came back, I was thrilled to experiment again with how to get a demon to like me. Persona 5 struck all of the right chords with me, and Royal gave it the advantage it needed to become my number 1 Persona game. With Strikers handing me my first husbando of the Persona series, my champion has done well in its position. So there you have it, my Persona list from worst to best. Again, this is not to say that any of these games are bad. The Persona series is phenomenal, and I will always recommend it to anyone looking for a good story to sink their teeth into. Each game has something unique to offer, with every character having the potential to be someone's favorite one way or another. You may even have your own opinions and have your own list, to which case, your list is valid. But I hope I didn't make anyone too mad with my thoughts. After all, this is just a list some random woman made on the internet. But if I was able to convince you to try out these 5 games, all 5 games, then I did my job correctly.